Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiriyet. Hare Krishna. So I've been suggested to mention a couple of points which I was talking with a devotee friend about last night, and I thought I'd tie it into remaking actually the video of this verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is a Srimad Bhagavatam class with a little bit of preparation. It's not very rehearsed or anything, but I've got a few verses I'll go through, and I say remake because I did do a video of this verse before, but I had a cold and the recording didn't sound very good, so I thought I'd redo it today. The verse is from the second chapter of Canto 1, Srimad Bhagavatam, text number 6. Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhaktiradhokshaje ahaituki apratihata jayatma suprasidati. Sa, that, vai, certainly, pumsam, for mankind, paraha, sublime, dharmaha, occupation, yata, by which, bhakti, devotional service, adhokshaje, unto the transcendence, ahaituki, causeless, apratihata, unbroken, yaya, by which, atma, the self, suprasidati, completely satisfied. The supreme occupation, dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. In this statement, Sri Suta Goswami answers the first question of the sages of Naimisharanya. The sages asked him to summarize the whole range of revealed scriptures and present the most essential part so that fallen people or the people in general might easily take it up. The Vedas prescribe two different types of occupation for the human being. One is called the Pravriti Marg, or the path of sense enjoyment, and the other is called the Nivriti Marg, or the path of renunciation. The path of enjoyment is inferior, and the path of sacrifice for the supreme cause is superior. The material existence of the living being is a diseased condition of actual life. Actual life is spiritual existence, or Brahma Bhuta. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 30, Text 20. Brahma Bhuta existence, where life is eternal, blissful and full of knowledge. Material existence is temporary, illusory and full of miseries. There is no happiness at all. There is just the futile attempt to get rid of the miseries, and temporary cessation of misery is falsely called happiness. Therefore, the path of progressive material enjoyment, which is temporary, miserable and illusory, is inferior. But devotional service to the Supreme Lord, which leads one to eternal, blissful and all-cognizant life, is called the superior quality of occupation. This is sometimes polluted when mixed with the inferior quality. For example, adoption of devotional service for material gain is certainly an obstruction to the progressive path of renunciation. Renunciation or abnegation for ultimate good is certainly a better occupation than enjoyment in the diseased condition of life. Such enjoyment only aggravates the symptoms of disease and increases its duration. Therefore, devotional service to the Lord must be pure in quality, i.e., without the least desire for material enjoyment. One should, therefore, accept the superior quality of occupation in the form of devotional service of the Lord without any tinge of unnecessary desire, fruitive action and philosophical speculation. This alone can lead one to perpetual solace in his service. I'll read the translation one more time. The supreme occupation, Dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the Transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. So I'm remembering some of what I said when I gave this talk on it. I gave a talk on this verse before, but before I forget, I want to cover the 2 points which it was suggested I put into a video. The first point was about the definition of bhakti, or the definition of devotion, because we've got this dual language of Sanskrit and English, and obviously there's many other languages around the world, but for me that's generally the thing. A little bit of Hindi maybe, but mostly is Sanskrit and English. And I just seem to surmise that, partly because I do it myself as well, is that we don't give a second thought to what we mean, what devotion means. And in the previous video, I gave a definition on the spot of constant application or absorption, or and absorption over time. Constant absorption and application over time, which is maybe a little different to what some of us think of, or when we say devotional service. Everyone has their own understanding, but we must be careful not to be glib about what we mean by this. So if I Google the Oxford Dictionary definition of devotion, it says love, loyalty or enthusiasm for a person or activity, religious worship or observance, prayers or religious observances. And then it gives an example: she went to her devotions. So it makes it the verb, and that, I think, is really the key to what I wanted to highlight, was this devotion in action, that it's a communion, that the Sanskrit bhakti comes from the root bhaj, which we can look it up, but it means attachment, communion, togetherness, being with, devoted, devotion. If I put in bhakti into the Sanskrit dictionary, we get attachment, faithfulness, fondness for, separation, which is interesting. I'll come back to that. Streak, zeal, worship, predisposition, succession. So the streak point is that it's ongoing. It's little by little. It's day by day. That's why we have to be patient. Patience, tolerance, enthusiasm. Because it doesn't just happen overnight. And then the separation is there because, as obviously the Vipralamba bhav, when bhakti reaches the level of prema, there's actually two distinctions in the Shikshastakam. There's the last two, the 7th and the 8th shlokas describe. The 7th shloka describes love in Vipralamba bhav, in the mood of separation, and the Ashlishyava Padaratam Panastumam 8th shloka describes the love in Sambhog, in union. So there's bhakti in the sense of separation, is the heart's call for the beloved. So when we're chanting, we call out to Radhe Shyam, where are you? Please don't forsake me. That's the level of attachment. We can go through again. I'm sure people familiar will have heard it so many times. The process from Shraddha to Prem. But with the Shraddha, you get some faith, and I want to talk a little bit about that as well. That you get how we get that faith, and then comes sadhu sangha. We associate with devotees. Then the bhajana kriya, we do the bhajan, and this is what I mean by this streak, that it's a succession of days, weeks, months, years, lifetimes. How many lifetimes we don't know, but like in the Bhagavad Gita it says, perfection may be difficult to attain, but that doesn't mean it's not worth striving for. It is worth striving for perfection, even though it's that asha bandha, that we're bound to hope. We're bound to that hope that one day, one sweet fine day, somewhere, sometime, we will meet Radha Krishna, we will enter the Leelas, and that comes through with sort of going up the ladder more. There's anartha nivriti. We minimize down to zero in the end, or practically zero. The Srimad Bhagavatam says it says in a different verse, it says that all that is inauspicious is practically destroyed by hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's part of bhajana kriya, is attendance in Srimad Bhagavatam class, and then nishtita bhakti, that we get some steadiness, and ruchi, taste comes, taste for the holy name, taste for serving Radha Krishna, and then asakti. So that's echoed in, it's the top result in the Sanskrit dictionary of bhakti here is attachment, actually, and there's quite a high level. The bhakti, asakti bhakti, that we get real attachment that you can't, and we see in the Chaitanya Leela, and not just Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, but all of his followers, like the Mahajans who did bhajan in Vraj and wrote books like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Raghunath Das Goswami. They exhibited the extreme attachment for Radha Krishna and for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is non-different from Krishna himself. So then after the asakti, then it's really the bhakti lata, the creeper of devotion, really starts bearing fruit, and it's described as the rising of the sun. We wake up and we're all bleary-eyed and we're not quite awake, and then before you know it, you have a shower, you get dressed, you put on your tilak, you turn around, and there's the sun. It's starting to rise, and then that's bhava and prema. But to go back to what I was saying about how we get that shraddha, is bhakti unmukhi sukriti. Sukriti, or pious activity, I'm going to read this. Sukriti means pious activity. And this is an entry from Harinam Chintamani. Sukriti or pious activity is of three varieties: Karmonmukhi, or piety derived from fruitive activities; Gyanonmukhi, or piety derived from the cultivation of knowledge; and Bhakti Unmukhi, or piety derived from devotional service. The first two result in enjoying the fruits of action and in liberation, respectively. However, Bhakti Unmukhi involves faith in and appreciation of pure devotional service. Such exalted piety is achieved by unknowing performance of pure devotional service. Without spiritual knowledge, Ajnata Sukriti. Bhakti Unmukhi is the most important kind of Sukriti, and it leads the jiva to meet a pure saintly devotee. By associating with a devotee of Krishna, the jiva's faith becomes firm. Gradually he develops a taste for chanting the holy name, becomes compassionate toward all beings, and is fixed in devotional service. So it's nothing can create bhakti except bhakti, but this Bhakti Unmukhi Sukriti is achieved by unknowing performance of pure devotional service. So how do we get bhakti? We do bhakti. So Prabhupada many times gave the example of bhakti is sweet, the holy name is sweet, but it's like a person with jaundice cannot taste sugar. It doesn't taste sweet to them. But the cure for that is sugar. So you just keep tasting, you keep taking the sugar, and it has an effect. And some days it doesn't feel like we're making much advancement. And there's a sort of principle of this constant application and absorption over time. We shouldn't be naive and think it's a mechanical process where it's just you buy the ticket, take the ride, and it's a flat road all the way. We go up, we go down, we plateau for a while, then we drop right down, and then we bounce right back, and then we plateau, and then we drop. But the general trajectory, if you plotted it on a graph, is up. It works. It's tried and tested, and this is where from Bhakti Unmukhi Sukriti leading us to meet a pure saintly devotee, which is echoed in the verse Vedanti Tattva Vidas. Tadvidi pranapatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshyanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadashanaha. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. So it's this the avaroha and the aroha, the descending and the descending. So the process of the mercy is avaroha. It's descending from above, comes down. There is an element of effort that we have to put in. Obviously, I was saying enthusiasm, motivation. We have to apply ourselves. But the good news, as the Christians say, the good news is by all reports on that Avaroha Panta scale, all reports coming down from us is incredibly positive. We're promised, and ultimately the parampara goes back to Krishna, who in the Bhagavad Gita he says many things, and we can take solace in those words. So that's another part of bhajana kriya, is reading, is study. But obviously our main sadhana is shravanam, is his hearing, but kirtanam and smaranam. Smaranam is stressed on the Raganuga side, that to remember and absorb in the Leelas. But the point about Bhakti Unmukhi Sukriti is echoed in this verse, which is in the first chapter of the Bhagavatam, questions by the sages. Apanna samshritim ghauram yannama vivasho grinam tata sadyo vimuccheta yad bibeti svayam bhayam. Living beings who are entangled in the complicated meshes of birth and death can be freed immediately by even unconsciously chanting the holy name of Krishna, which is feared by fear personified. So it's a bit like the even a little advancement on this path can save one from the most dangerous type of fear. But the other point which was suggested to talk about is really echoed in this purport to Savaipum Samparo Damo Yato Bhaktir Dhokshajai Shloka by Srila Prabhupada. It's funny, sometimes those synchronicities or serendipities that we find, it can be a point which gives us faith when we see that just how absolute the absolute truth is. When Krishna is in control, he is one of these qualities is that he's buddhiman, he's clever, he's very clever. And Srila Prabhupada is so Krishna conscious, he was very clever also. So the other point is about Dharma, and that's exactly this verse. The supreme occupation Dharma for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service. So it unto the transcendent Lord. So it relate these 2 points, which I haven't mentioned the second point yet, but the first point about defining devotion, and that so love must be there, and this small definition of it contacts the sat potency. It's eternal. It goes on forever. And that's one of the aspects. Is we're in it for good. And the other point is about most religion. This is just my observation. Is most religion, especially in the West, is about sin and repentance. Also in India, the Karmakanda Brahmins, and to talk about Sukriti, and then Punya, obviously virtue, and these pious credits. A lot of people turn to God, turn to Krishna in distress. Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita 4 kinds of people who turn to him and renders service to him. Is those desiring wealth, those in distress, the inquisitive, and those searching after knowledge of the Absolute. And a big motivating factor is distress. So distress can be good because it makes us turn to Krishna. But the point Prabhupada's making is this bifurcation into 2 distinct margs, distinct paths, pravriti marg and nivriti marg. And Maya's job is to keep us on the pravriti marg, is to keep us bound to set the life of sense enjoyment. And even when religion comes into play, a lot of what we pray for is freedom from reaction to our sinful life. People, they do their things to cover their sins, and then when they feel forgiven, they have no need more of God. So my question is, what are you going to do with God when you're completely forgiven? And the point I made last night was that Krishna doesn't actually hold any grudges. He's aloof in a kind of way. It's not like it's not like just by becoming completely sattvic, by being pure sattva guna. Well, it's confusing with my language there. But it's not. But sattva guna won't save us. Basically, is the point I'm making. Coming to the Shuddha Sattva platform is different, and it's beyond the scope of this video, I suppose, to define the difference between Shuddha Sattva and the three modes. But the point that pure devotional service, pure bhakti, is transcendental to the three modes, and it's transcendental to this karma kanda dharma. Dharma like that, a lot of people think dharma means getting a good education, dharma, artha, karma, moksha. I mean, and obviously it's all good. We shouldn't criticize too much because people are on a different platform. We shouldn't disturb the minds of those who are attached. Prabhupada said it's one of the Nama Parads. But real dharma is this loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. So there's another verse, because these are famous verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam. There's another element in this process from Shraddha to Sadhu Sangha. So I'll just read these verses. Shrinvatam svakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana hridyantasto hyabhadrani vidunoti suhritsatam. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma Supersoul in everyone's heart and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So by performing bhakti, by hearing the message, by shravanam, by kirtanam, and by smaranam, we lose the taste for material life, which is joyful, jai. That's what we want, and we can measure our own progress a little bit by how much that's happened. I can't claim it's happened completely for me, but I can claim it's happened maybe a little bit, and we're endeavouring. There's this streak of bhakti that we go day by day and more year by year, and we can start to make sankalps with ourselves and not try and stick to them like concrete. Or you say, right, I'm going to increase my chanting. But if we do increase our chanting, we don't go back. We don't do some rounds this day and then another rounds this day. That we say, right, no, this is my sankalp. This is how many rounds I'm doing every day, fixed number of rounds, and then come hell or high water, I'm doing those rounds every day. And then the desire for material enjoyment will disappear eventually. So what do we get? Because people think this is terrible. Generally, if people are frustrated on the pravritti marg of sense enjoyment, if their sense enjoyment is interrupted somehow or thwarted, then they stress out and they don't like it, and they feel very sad and dejected. Or we don't have to say it. We know, we've been there. And then, so what do we get? why are we sort of on this flip side? It's like they say, what is night for all beings is the time of awakening for the self-controlled, and the time of awakening for the self-controlled is night for all beings. How is that? It must be that you get something. Nirvritti is without. It's renunciation. But Prabhupada says in that purport about false renunciation not being the goal. So what is it about these Hare Krishnas? They're so happy, and they must have something special. And then not just that, they're going out on the street giving out books to give that something special. Well, that's what we have to find out. Was it Ata Shri Krishna Namadina Bhavam Grahyat Indriyami Sevan Mukehi Jivado Swayameva Spurat Yadaha. That the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be perceived by dull material senses, but through the process of bhakti, of pure bhakti, we can perceive him, and that's the goal. And that's what is difficult. It's like go back to the definition of bhakti as separation, is the heart's yearning for the beloved. All our chanting, our crying, but again, to repeat, is that asha bandha, is that hope. That's what drives us, is that hope forward. And then there's this nashta prayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavat yuttama sloke bhakti bhavati naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So again, Shravanam is about this. First two cantos the first canto is Krishna's lotus feet. So it's a good place to start, because there's that saying about you get to the XYZs, you don't forget your ABCs. So there's this Aroha Panta scale of progression from Shraddha to Prema. But the Raganuga side, when can that start? We've already given in the last talk video that I did. We talked about this. From when can it start? And some say, it's from Nishta. It can start from Nishta, but basically, from what I've read and what I've heard from Guru and Shastra, is that it's not just my own opinion. Is that when you if you have that greed, then that's all you need. All you need is greed, but not greed in a material sense for pravriti marg, sense enjoyment, but greed for entering the leelas, greed for attaining the even an infinitesimal speck taste of the sweet loving feelings exchanged between Krishna and the Braj gopis, and then from that jumping off point, Manjari Bhav Upasana can start, and Manjari Sadhana. And it's been mentioned before about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu inaugurated the Sankirtan movement, but he also came to give this Manjari Bhav Upasana, this Madhurya Ras. And even with the Madhurya Ras, there is the Gopi Bhav, where one may enjoy directly with Krishna, but the Manjaris never do. They will resist. If Krishna approaches the Manjaris to enjoy personally with them, they will run away, or they will chant Radhe Radhe. So it's this point is this verse, Savaipum Samparo Dhammo, says the supreme occupation for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Adhokshaje, it says unto the transcendence. But specifically, see, that can be mistaken for impersonal philosophy. But unto the transcendent Lord. I've always wondered why the word Lord is used so many times as well. It's just a useful word, but it comes from Old English, meaning he who brings the breadwinner. I find it strange that because and sometimes people say Lord Krishna, or they say Shri Krishna. So Shri is Radhe, is the title Shri, obviously, but it means Radhe is Jaya. She is Jaya Shri. So loving devotional service under the transcendent Lord, and obviously that entails Radha Krishna Yugal, is the couple, the divine couple. And in Manjari Bhavolasya Rati, generally it's on the side of Radharani that we perform seva to Radharani. And even amongst gopis, there are those that are Krishna Sneh Adhika and those that are Radha Sneh Adhika. But I don't know if it's possible. It's a little bit strange to hear of one of Radha's Manjaris who's Krishna Sneh Adhika. I don't know, maybe someone else can comment or something about that. But I would generally say that we are Radha Sneha Adhik, that is Sneha, the affection, of more affection for Radha. And the setting, the most important setting is Radha Kund, because that's where Radha and Krishna enjoy pastimes without much distraction, without many. Although I've been reading Bhavasara Sangraha, and we hear about Kundalata and Jatila coming to try and break up, and the gopis and manjaris have so many clever tactics to filter Radha and Krishna away and to arrange their meeting. So in our chanting, we can perform smaran while chanting, and it's not that it's just some kalpana imagination, but the process of visualization can be there, and we can work on praying fervently to enter the leelas, to be made eligible to enter the leela, to meditate on the leela, and to serve Radha personally. And there's so many sevas we can think of. Generally, one manjari has one main seva which they perform, but then they also perform a variety of other sevas. Like we can assist in Radha and Krishna meeting each other, and obviously there's lots of very personal, intimate sevas like combing hair and painting designs and patterns on Radha's arms, and painting a tilak on, and cleaning the kunj and bathing Radha. So many intimate sevas is there, which is very important, really. Is very satisfying. Radha has so much grace. She is Vaidagdi Digdha Vigraha. She is the form of grace, anointed with grace. So I will end this talk here somewhere. Prabhupada, just to go back into the purport, we'll finish with the purport. He's talking about life eternal, full bliss and full of knowledge, whereas material existence is temporary, illusory, and full of miseries. There is no happiness at all. That's what he says. There is no happiness at all in material life. And then at the end of the purport he says, one can realize it as devotional service progresses. So it's a progressive streak. Keep the streak going. Keep going. One can realize the relation of servant and the served is the most congenial form of intimacy. So this is the point about Bhavolasya Rati of the Manjaris. Is different to the Dasya Rati of other devotees, but it's called Bhavolasya Rati, and it involves the intimate savors which I've just described, of which there are many others. So Prabhupada, he gave this Raganuga. He wanted to give this. Obviously, he translated so many books, but he says here we can realize it's the most congenial form of intimacy. Everyone should engage himself in that transcendental loving service of the Lord, even in the present conditional state of material existence. That will gradually give one the clue to actual life and please him to complete satisfaction. So may we all find our heart's desire to complete satisfaction in the love-laden land of Vraja Chintamani Vrindavan. Jai Jai Shri Radhe.